I am sleepy as I'm standing here. I came this morning from Ghana, straight to this conference, because I think that you are doing important work. I am going back this afternoon because I have a conference to run tomorrow. So it is crazy. Now the reason I think that you are important is because Uyolisa wouldn't let me go, Charlene, for one reason or the other. I took a decision a long time ago that because I'm old, we need to pass on the baton to younger people, intentionally and consciously so. So when she pleaded that part of the work that you guys are doing is after-school programs, I am a beneficiary of an after-school program. There is one young woman called Boni. Upuboni. Yes. Uboni, my mother is Rose Mbude. She started the Etafeni project in Nyanga. She's the founder of Etafeni. I learned there the importance as a young child of after-school programs. And I learned there, Oboni, when they grew up Etafeni and many other young people. So I couldn't say no to a conference about after-school programs because I know from me what that meant. Colleagues, I always start with this line that I am a daughter of a domestic worker. And I'm proud of that. My father was a gardener. And nothing makes me more proud than the fact that there's a woman who decided that the system at that time was never going to give those children everything that they needed. So this is why I think you are very important. Because as a Department of Education, we will never do what you do. So I want you to put your hands together for yourselves. My presentation, short presentation, is just about something very small and simple. And a very apt title that I came up for this conference is, or this workshop, After School Programs, Hope Where Hope is Scarce, Beyond the Classroom. Because it is not classrooms that really educate. Education does not start in the classroom. So it is up that education goes beyond the classroom. The idea that you will only learn in the classroom is an idea that is a figment of our imagination. It is actually home. So dragging education back to where it belongs is quite important for me. Now, with the mother tongue-based bilingual education program, as you see in my title slide, that the mother tongue-based bilingual education program's driving mantra is that it must widen epistemic access for all children in South Africa. There was a time when the struggle in South Africa was opening the doors of learning. Now it is no longer opening the doors of learning. It is when you are in the classroom, how do you access what you are being taught? And that sits at the heart of after-school programs because we realize that not all children access the epistemes, the ways of knowing. And this is why this kind of discussion is important, that I honor it. So for us, widening epistemic access to quality education in South Africa's townships and rural areas is not just a nice to have. Because we know when children are not literate, what happens. So we are all busy. Now the important and key question is is this busy a good busy with a return on investment? Because the investment that is injected in all programs, including basic education sector programs, higher education sector programs, and these after-school programs, we try very hard to generate income and get funding. So the most important question is, as we are all trying to ensure, access for children, is this a good busy? We did a self-reflection in the DBE about a year ago, looking at the progress over 30 years, the opportunities that the system has created, and also the challenges that remain. Now in green, you will see those opportunities and the progress that we have traversed over a 30-year period. And no one, and I think in this room, everyone can agree that you can't reverse 300 years in 30 years. There's just no way. But very key and important are the fact that when you self-reflect, you say to yourself, I cannot change everything overnight. This is a process and not an event. But what is it that we have tried to do? What still remains a challenge? There are 3 challenges that stick out like a sore thumb in education right now. Number 1, the inherited inequalities remain. It depends about Zalongban. Which school do you go to? Which school opens? Number 2, budgetary constraints combined with the growth in learner numbers. Schools were never really designed for all children. And now that schools have all children, we see them bursting at the seams. And number 3, continuing poverty at home. Now I always call it the stubborn triple challenge. It does not seem to go away, and it requires that we self-introspect. When we look, doing an analysis of the extent to which the inherited inequalities impact on the learning trajectories of children, we ask which children are impacted by these inequalities. And I want to tell you in this meeting that underperformance in South Africa has a color. It is black, it has class, it is poor, and it has a language. It is African language children who are not doing well. And that's why all these programs are in townships and rural areas. So we need to ask a question structurally. What keeps black African language children, particularly those who are poor, away from educational success? Number 2, when we look at the budgetary constraints, South Africa is not growing economically. Now, you then need to ask yourself, and I think you must do the same exercise. It is one thing to want funding. It is another for that funding to be impactful, where you see impact. Because you can spend, and that expenditure, if it produces the kind of results that we see with the PEARLs, then it can't be one department answering about why those children can't read when there are all these programs. There's something systemically wrong. Now, in a tight fiscal environment, we must ask, which programs do we redirect? And where do we redirect such attention to the root causes rather than endlessly spend on symptomatic relief? When you leave the cause of underperformance and jump straight to the cause, to the symptoms, and leave the cause, it will always be like a wound that is not cleaned. Number 3, the issue of continuing poverty and hunger at home. We can't do much as the DBE in terms of going home and providing meals to those children. The school nutrition programs are meant to be a temporary relief so that you don't feed a child who is hungry. But we need to ask, to what extent does the sector produce children who sit in that cycle perpetually? And we see with this slide that when we speak about the performance in mathematics, and I think the literacy one everybody knows. Now, if you look at that graph, purposefully, the red is performance beyond or above 50%. And the green is purposefully those kids who are performing below 50%. Now, you will know that if already in grade R, you have that group of that cohort that is below 50%, you ask yourself, what happened so early on? But we do know that we say that there is mother tongue education for black children from grades R, but we know that it's not true. You can't have mother tongue education when the teachers and the practitioners in ECD have not been trained to teach in this course. You can't. So it's a fallacy. It's a figment of our minds. So these discussions that people have, why are they underperforming when they are writing in Xhosa? It is because the teachers are sinking and swimming, because the quality of that university ends at graduation. It is that teacher and that ECD practitioner that must sink or swim while the fees had been paid. So we must ask, what is the systemic problem? And part of the systemic problem is the fact that higher education institutions have not changed. So they maintain what we call the status maintenance syndrome, because they assume that you, at the end, when you have graduated with a B.Ed foundation phase, you will see what to do in that Xhosa classroom, because all your education has been mainly in English. So we have no mother tongue education if the supply does not meet the demand. And this is what is going to be happening, because in the foundation phase, the mathematics teacher has not been taken through the concepts, so that as they go and teach mathematics, so your after-school program must go and mitigate what has happened. And the real people who are professors, who produce these graduates, they get paid at the end of the month. So recalculation in higher education is a big problem, and it sits at the core of the problems we are having with supply. So before we blame the teachers, we must ask, who trains the teachers? So we are always going to have after-school programs, as long as the systemic pillars don't change. They remain where they are. Now, I showed you what happens in the foundation, intermediate phase, and senior phase, right up until grade 10. This is called cumulative disfluency. What is cumulative disfluency? Is when small gaps become so huge that, as you see there in grade 10, it's 50-50. The number of children who started out well, performing at 90% in grades R, by the time they leave school, they sleep at school, Saturday classes, morning classes, winter, summer, and only black children go through that. Because the gaps they've accumulated over the years make them remain there. What do we say in society? Black teachers don't teach. That's what we say. We blame parents, we blame children, we blame teachers, we never blame the system that keeps things as they are. Now, I have a problem with people who always say, I don't see race, Naledi. I always tell them, we need to buy you glasses. Now the reason for that is that when we sit as the DBE, we sit with this data, and we see the racial differences in terms of performance. We know who's going to go and work at Kentucky. We already know. It's the same system, same universities, same degrees, same teachers. Then it can't be that these children who have gone through this system are unable to perform well through a single system. And this is why we are moving towards addressing what causes this inequality, because it's the number one It does not matter where they are. Even if they are at Bishops, they still need extra classes, master maths, and all these other classes. So this is where we are sitting at with black children in mathematics in grade 12. They are always on the left, and we have children who are so-called colored, so-called Indian, and so-called white at the far end. So the systemic organization of how things are going to be economically for these children, that is why you will always have the after-school programs. Because we are all trying to close these gaps so that we don't have this kind of data. But unfortunately, for now, it is what it is. And I appreciate the fact that all of us in this room are trying to close those gaps. We know that throughout the world, middle class children have after-school programs, whether it's dance, whether it's their, it's debates, and many other programs, social enrichment, to develop them in totality. So there's nothing strange about after-school programs. And maybe in South Africa, we've always thought that they are there to close a gap. We haven't seen them as an important part of what it is that should be happening, because schools are not designed to develop children holistically. We might aim to do that, but it doesn't happen because there are more than 35 children in that classroom. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Children are different. Now, appreciate the fact that in terms of skills enrichment, that's what they try to do. Convenience and safety, it's a safe environment, because parents with full-time jobs can't look after their children after school because they still have to come home late, and the academic edge, it's quite important because they deliver those support and remedial support where there is need to. Now, what is the South African government funding for after-school programs? It primarily targets underserved communities through provincial departments and subsidies with limited national level allocations. There's still a lot of work to be done, colleagues, with trying to change the image of what after-school programs are. There are provincial funding streams, and most of that is designed around ECD. And at the national level, we know the DBE program launched in 2025, and with the Western Cape government supporting the Lights On after-school campaigns. Now, what are the challenges that we see? Funding relies on compliance-heavy grants. So if you are a township ASP, we are going to have a problem with those compliance standards that are put up for you. Call persists for redistribution from fee charging schools to no-fee quintiles 1 to 3, and ASPs lack dedicated national budgets despite proven impact on learning loss. Now, what can we do together on this journey as we actually do need one another? I sincerely think that the partnership models that we can put together, like what we see with the Western Cape Youth and After-School Camp programs, is quite important. Because as governments, we provide the infrastructure, because most of these ASPs happen in schools or in churches. The modeling, we need people to work around the models where we see that the model is of mutual beneficiation to both sides and not being seen as an entity that only just closes gaps. Shared funding and operations, joint initiatives to diversify funding, so that as we try to garner or gather funding, it's a joint venture. And outcomes and best practices must be shared with clear roles, ongoing communication, and data sharing to ensure alignment. Because sometimes I think that the programs don't really target what we pick up in the system with our data. So then they become parallel programs. And that is where the irritation of each other usually comes from. Cross-sector ties with parks, libraries, and employment agencies, they must expand reach, prioritizing hard-to-serve youth in high poverty zones. But I'm not here to sell any particular after-school program. That's not my job. But I do want to, where there is good work happening, to say that the coordination we are starting to see with the Learning Trust, congratulations, guys. We need that collaboration, that coordination, because the center must hold for ASPs. And the quality of the mentoring, the coaching is very important. It then means that the kind of people that you get, the training that they must go through, we must see the value because we've invested in that person who will do the mentoring of what we can't do. What ASPs are and what they are not is quite important for us to clarify moving forward. Because sometimes this is where the misunderstanding happens. What actually are they there for? Are they a parallel school? And I think the Learning Trust emphasis on bridging education gaps for the quintile 1 to 3 schools, we see that it fosters the reading culture that we want out there and integrate holistic skills. We are not saying it's the only organization that is doing this, but we love the fact that after COVID-19, we are beginning to see this coordination. The coordination signals to the department that the center is beginning to hold. Not everyone doing everything all over. On our side, what is the elephant in the room with ASPs? They face systemic weaknesses that undermine their potential to address educational inequities, particularly in under-resourced areas. We know that. The less English you have, the worse that ASP is going to be. Because if you can't fill out the forms that funders want, if you can't put up a business case, you will not get funding. So you're still within the ASP field. You need to ensure that you journey with those who are coming from areas where you know that the skill funders want, they don't have, but they are still doing the work. So we see the different quality and values. The second challenge is that ASPs mirror global north models. Thereby, they're duplicating the school weaknesses. You might not necessarily have a program working because it works well in the US or in the UK or in any global south country. Contextualizing what South Africa needs and what that particular area in South Africa needs is very, very important. There's a heavy reliance on grants versus generative models. It's going to be like this because there isn't government support that is required. And we want to accept that it's part of the problem. Fragmentation and scale. We see ASPs operating in silos without any national coordination, resulting in very patchy coverage and reaching only a fraction of children. I've already mentioned the funding instability. This issue of quality and infrastructure gaps is a very important one for me. The issue of language barriers is a problem for us, and this is what I drive in the DBE. What can be done differently? It is what we call business unusual, in pursuance of sustainability beyond just filling in gaps. I want you to focus on this particular slide of the learning pyramid. If your after-school program is going to be focusing on that 5% at the base, where children repeat what happened in school, sitting and listening to you, doing a lecture type of intervention, you are wasting their time as we waste their time during school. Because you are teaching, but they are not learning. And there's a difference between the two. We would love, because in terms of research around average retention rate, how much children remember, 90% of the time, 90 to 95% of the time, a child who struggles to articulate what they have learned and teach others, you must know that's already a red flag. So this business that we have trying to reteach after school is not going to work. And that is why when we look for impact, there isn't much, because you are replicating what happened during school. Number 2, make sure then that 90% of the time it is the child demonstrating that they know this area, not you doing it for them, because teachers are already doing that. Learners sit quietly in class and the teacher sits, is on the board writing, and she is the one doing all the work. So if you replicate that in an after-school program, please, the impact is going to be a problem. Number 2, 75% of the time, children must practice by doing, applying knowledge through exercise and practice, including soft skills, by the way. Now, if the application of knowledge of what they have learned or what you are trying to transfer to them, they don't do that, they still watch you, you are also wasting their time, because they will not retain whatever you have put into them. 50% must be discussion time. Participating in group discussions and collaborative learning is very important. That is the science of learning. Because if you are just a participant who is sitting there, you are unable as a coach or as a mentor to see who is strong where, because your exercises and your programming and your curricula does not reflect this part, which is quite important, because it must happen 50% of the time. 30% of the time is demonstration, where they observe a demonstration or simulation. One of the best things I learned during my after-school programs was baking, and this is where my love for science began. Because with the carbon dioxide causing the dough to rise, I did not need to be in a science class. So I learned about carbon dioxide there in the baking class. So stop worrying too much about books. The small things that children need to know can also be done there in the after-school programs, including ukova magwinya. If it's things that are in their environment, they will learn easier. Now 20% must be audiovisual. You don't have to talk all the time. You can have a cartoon or whatever, because learning through visuals, at least 20% of the time, does contribute to what we call average retention rate. It's only 10% that is reading. Reading textbooks or articles, 10% of the time. Tina, what we want to do in reading programs, we give them books we want them to read all the time. It creates that fatigue, because any child who has a weakness in language skills is not going to be, it does not matter how many books you read, you give them. It's like having a big swimming pool for a child who can't swim. They drown. They can't. It's only 5% of lecture time when you introduce things, when you are the one who is prompting them, but really we want them to be the ones who are doing most of that. Now, what makes teachers and mentors and coaches to spend time lecturing children? There's a process that happens at the 7th month of pregnancy, at the 3rd trimester. I'm a science teacher, and there's nothing more that excites me with neuroscience, particularly the development of language in children. And the reason we call it the mother tongue, not the father tongue, not the uncle tongue, it is because of the umbilical cord. Something happens during that time, during that fetal programming. And we know that the 9 months is spread, is cut into 3 with the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd trimester. But something phenomenal happens on the 3rd trimester. The human ear significantly develops in utero. Babies can hear sounds, but everybody else seems or sounds muffled. It's almost like a washing machine drum is moving. There's only one distinct voice that they can hear. E-wave attenuation, and the fact that sounds travel faster in water. And the first water that babies experience is in the uterus. And it is that water that enables, that carries over to the child the voice of the mother through the fallopian tube. Now, when nature programs children around language learning does not start when children are born. It starts when they are in utero. That's why we must read to them before they are born. We talk to them. We do many things before they are born, because anything else that you do after is remedial. Now, the reason our children sit in class and the teacher goes on is because we have not understood the science around language development, because language is what they will need to do everything in their life. There are two hardwiring processes that happen in human beings. It's one, language, and the other is walking. Everything else is learned. Now, babies who speak isiZulu will babble in isiZulu around 10 months. Those who speak French will babble in French. Those who speak Afrikaans will babble in Afrikaans. Because what they hear, anything that they hear from the mother goes to what we call a linguistic repertoire, a linguistic reservoir. Now, in that linguistic reservoir, even if they can't reproduce sound, that is where everything that they've heard is stored through what we call fetal programming. Now, when we change African language children, before they learn, for them to learn English, we are reprogramming them. And that's why they must sit in extra classes. Saturday, Sunday, after school, winter, summer, because we have changed what nature gave them naturally. Now, it doesn't mean because you speak English you will know mathematics. But at least the burden is shortened for you because you go straight to learn the register of mathematics. That a corner is a vertex. You are not going to know titrations and parallelograms because you speak English. But at least you will go straight into learning those. But for Black African language children, you first have to learn English and then learn in it at the same time. And that is where the triple burden is for the majority of Black African language learners. This is why the DBE has taken it upon itself, as the Constitution says, that let's go back and put a spotlight on languaging. And this is what I would want. I would implore our after-school programs to look into the area of languaging. Because while Afrikaans and English children are learning, African language learners are learning English before they learn. I've spoken about hardwiring and why it is important, and the fact that a child's vocabulary by the age of 3 powerfully predicts their reading ability, because there's a window of opportunity. Scientists are saying maybe that window will open somehow later on. That's a different scientific discussion. But very important is that we are involved in a process that seeks to ensure that from ECD, from the time children are born, we concentrate on their language development. Because a child who has access to their home language from cradle to university has better chances of schooling. Because they concentrate on the learning and not on learning a language and learn through it at the same time. Now, this opportunity by the age of 3 to 5, it closes because the brain uses a very, very important process. Whatever the brain does not use, it prunes. So before the pruning process happens, we must ensure that our after-school programs are rich with language. So the communities that are there, Otat, Anoma, Kulu, and grannies, are very important resources, because the vocabulary, the language they speak to those children through Insomi stories are important building blocks, because we've taken them out to say they here are books. They're not going to get to those books without the oral language that is needed as building blocks. And that is why impact cannot be measured in most of our programs, because we think that more is better. What is language nutrition? It's the foundation for early learning success, because every word a child hears, it shapes their future. Now, language nutrition is the quality and quantity of words children experience, and it is essential to brain development as healthy food is to physical growth. A child who has language malnutrition is going to struggle. Now, we know, as you go back to your reading programs, that the reading problem is a language problem. Because despite significant investment in reading programs and teacher training, scores remain stubbornly low because, what is the insight? Reading failure is fundamentally a language problem. So when we misdiagnose the issue as purely mechanical, you count how many words per minute they speak, you've missed the deeper language comprehension deficit holding learners back. The weaker the language, the weaker their reading skills, because they need the language for them to build on reading proficiency. If we understand this, colleagues, that when language skills are weak, reading fails. I remember when you were sent to the staff room, when I grew up, Utishala, without even asking you what you want, they will say to you, speak English. They haven't heard what you are there for. Because the whole trajectory is that you must speak English. So if we understand that more language, particularly the mother tongue, what the child had heard, the bilingualism that you are trying to build must be built on that. We know, okay, South Africa, that we are rich in research. We have 120 years of reports around mother tongue education. But who it is for is what we have not extended those reports for African children. And that is why we now cannot wait to go back and correct our mistakes, thinking that mother tongue education is only for English and Afrikaans children. Now, valid questions about where they will go to university, there are valid answers. Where do Afrikaans kids go? They go everywhere. So we have not invested enough in ensuring that the trajectory is as clear for these children as possible. Now, our after-school programs, if we open epistemic access, are not only going to be closing gaps, but we will be using them for the holistic development and not just a place for closing gaps. What are we saying? Mother tongue-based bilingual education therefore diffuses the binary between the school and the home, because the language of the child carries the experiences that children will later need, having been deposited by their life experiences. So after-school programs must facilitate this gap by ensuring that the learning at school actually arrives at home. We know that already before the pandemic, there were strains in our system. That one we know. But after-school programs should widen epistemic access. And I've left this for you, Ugote, how exactly we are proposing that it should happen. I don't want to waste your time. We appreciate the fact that you guys are trying to bridge the gaps, because when formal schooling falls short, they step in to do the work that we need to, but we need you to be more holistic. We have decided to embrace the use of ethical AI to close the gaps with African languages. We all have read about Professor Vukosi Marivate, the young 35-year-old professor of data science at the University of Pretoria, who's been given a funding by Google to do all the work of trying to close the gaps with African languages digitally, because any language that is not findable digitally is going to have problems. So once you bootstrap your programs with our program, we've opened a tool called Ulwimi Links, where all the work that you are doing, including the lesson plans, they must find themselves in Illuminate, because the more we increase the digital accent of African languages, the better it will be for literacy and numeracy for African language users, because we right now are sitting with a problem where even your WhatsApp, as you write your WhatsApp in Xhosa, it increases the cloud for Xhosa. That's what it does. The more you use only English, the more it increases and the gap widens. So there's something that we can do where we are to ensure this. So the same thing that you can do with matching and matching, because the algorithms must analyze your practitioner profiles. Paired with the after-school program so that we can have programs that feed into each other. Lastly, there are emerging opportunities with digital inclusion, extending reach to remote learners in the post-pandemic landscape, because they are proven lever in after-school programs to reduce educational inequality and unlock untapped potential. I'm proposing this for you, colleagues. This is our model for MTBBE 2025 to 2028. We have started with only 2 learning areas, mathematics and science, natural sciences and technology, with language and literacy as well. We are unable to get any results or returns on MTBBE if our home languages are weak. And home language education should feed into the learning of English, because that must serve as the stepping stone to better acquisition of English. So this is the program that I'm suggesting. I'm leaving this presentation with you, and these are the models, language models that you can use in your ASPs. You can have a single medium model of an ASP. There are risks to that because the bilingualism is going to be limited. But in terms of the opportunities, the learners will be strong in the first language. You can have dual medium programs where there are 2 major languages that you utilize. The risks are that it's paced bilingualism, it requires time and a skilled bilingual educator, but the opportunities are that they are going to be strong in English and also strong in their home language as well. It can be parallel medium, where in the same ASP you allocate a class per language, but this model, the risk of it is that it can polarize children in terms of their language, their race, their tribe. So it's important that you have programs that bring them together, even if in terms of their language development, you separate them. Now, trans-languaging in all 3 is also a viable option because it's time-consuming, but it means that there is movement, fluid movement between the languages in the same ASP. So all these, I've mapped them out for you. And I'm saying to you, as we build literacy across the grades from ECD, I've mapped for you what it is step by step that you should do, particularly in primary schooling, right up to grade 6, at least for foundational learning, and I'm leaving this with you. My conclusion is this. We can reliably predict that a single MTBBE model will not be equally appropriate for all schools. So you will have different models across different ASPs and different schools. Now, all provinces have been given e-forms so that you can begin to match, to do the matching and mapping of profiles of educators. You should still do the same with your language proficiencies of your coaches. Technology, I've already mentioned, with diverse models. Beginning is anxiety-provoking, but delaying is not an option. In conclusion, we now know, post-COVID-19, that an ASP might be the only companion a child might have beyond the classroom. Ndiyabulela kakhulu.